Bolivia's deposed President Evo Morales says dialogue is the only solution to put an end to the violence in his country as he gives an exclusive interview to teleSUR. Argentina's appeal court confirms the acquittal of jailed social activist Milagro Sala in the Azopardo shooting case. And the first day of U.S. President Donald Trump's public impeachment hearing reveals more evidence of his violations of the Constitution. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo and this is from the South. Bolivia's deposed President Evo Morales has given an exclusive interview to teleSUR on the first day of his political asylum in Mexico. He repeated his call for dialogue as the only solution to the violence in his country, and he called on the police to stop shooting at protesters, saying that the demands of social movements can never be stopped with bullets and weapons.
Exactly half an hour ago, I was talking to our senators, the mass senators in the assembly, and they said they had to cut off the call. The police are intervening. Otherwise, they are going to arrest us. So the police were intervening in the meeting of our senators. That is the extreme to which the police violence is reaching in Bolivia. This is like the old military dictatorships, and what's more, they have the Bible in their hands. But tanks in the streets, helicopters dropping tear gas, as we saw a couple of days ago. I want the people of Bolivia to know, and the people of the world to know, that we have been aiming to try to avoid violence. We have provided a lot of equipment to these two important institutions, to the police to protect citizens and the other to defend the country. And now they are using weapons against the people. In my own experience, with bullets and weapons, you will never solve the demands of a movement. Whether it's a social movement, a trade union movement, a movement of the poor. So they've just informed me 30,000 people in an Alto have been mobilized. You can't stop them with bullets. And in other departments there are movements. This is a spontaneous uprising. It's automatic. But I am asking for peace. We want to end violence. But they have provoked us. They have provoked this resistance.
President Morales also condemned the action by opposition Senator Yanine Añez when she proclaimed herself interim president of Bolivia, and he blamed the Organization of American States and the United States for promoting the coup.
Her roots are racist, anti-indigenous, but she didn't follow the Constitution. First, the resignation has to be approved by the Assembly, and that didn't happen. No, it didn't happen. Secondly, and even if they went to say they approved my resignation, who should then assume the president? The president of the Senate. And if they resent, then the president of the lower house. That's the line of succession. She is second vice president of the Senate, who has self-proclaimed herself president, and the United States are recognizing him. Britain has recognized him. So that's the coup comes from the United States.
Social movements in Bolivia have marched from El Alto to the center of La Paz to oppose the coup against Evo Morales. Thousands gathered first in El Alto for a cabildo or community assembly. They said they would not allow the Senator Yanine Añez to lead the country after she proclaimed herself president on Tuesday night. And they also condemned the media for remaining silent about police repression.
Here all the people of El Alto are mobilizing to march to La Paz, because we cannot accept that a racist assumes the presidency. What's more, this lady hates our symbol, the Huipala flag, so we are united from the grassroots up. We are not being led by any political party.
We have had beatings, people arrested unjustly, even the loss of human lives. But none of the media speaks of this. The whole of the city of El Alto condemns these media for being in the pocket of the right.
A huge march then set off for the center of La Paz and the Plaza Murillo, where the Legislative Assembly is located. They say the self-proclaimed president has no legitimacy and must leave. Trade unions and campesino organizations are also promising to march on La Paz and hold a general strike if constitutional order is not restored.
We are holding a mass march from a city which has been a symbol of a revolution against racism. Our demand is the resignation of the scoopmonger, President Áñez.
The march was approaching the center of La Paz. Lawmakers from Evo Morales' mass party were prevented from getting into the assembly building.
We are members of parliament. We need to get into our offices and be able to hold the meetings we need to have. And we're asking the colonel here to let us in. Nothing more than that.
But when the senator and other anti-coup lawmakers did try to get in, the police used force to stop them. They were beaten and tear gas was fired. Adriana Salvatierra is the president of the Senate, which would put her first in line to succeed Evo Morales. She also presented her resignation on Sunday, but it was never accepted by the Congress.
We have been blocked access to parliament. We have been beaten. They have tear gases us. This is a clear sample of the violence that they are willing to exercise. And it is also showed that there are no guarantees for parliamentary work. This is illegal. It is an abuse and it is a coup d'etat.
The president of the Senate did eventually get into the assembly building and is calling for an extraordinary session to begin. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, is there. Freddy.
There are a lot of people mobilizing here. They have come from El Alto and from the highlands of La Paz department. The first to arrive were the rural teachers, then red ponchos, who are campesinos from outside La Paz, and they are calling on other organizations to join them. The central demand is that the installing of a new government and a self-proclaimed president, which happened last night, be annulled, and that the Legislative Assembly be allowed to meet democratically and in line with the Bolivian constitution, to reach a new national accord. Let's just show you what is happening here, where things are quite tense.
Vamos contigo mientras vamos mostrando imágenes de lo que pasa aquí.
So just a block away from the Plaza Murillo, we have a scene that is really moving. The police approached, people here shouted at them, "Keep calm, we are peaceful, don't shoot at us." And the policeman on the corner understood the message and moved on. That is what just happened here.
We thank Freddy for that report. Let's take a short break now, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Argentina's appeal court has confirmed the acquittal of jailed social activist Milagros Sala in the Azopardo shooting case. Sala was accused of ordering the murder of Alberto Esteban Cardoso by hiring Fabián Chato Avil to kill him in 2007. Police arrested and charged all the three. However, Sala and Cardoso were acquitted on December 27th of 2018 due to lack of evidence. The prosecutor's office appealed the ruling as it sought 12 years in prison for the social leader and 4 years for Cardoso. This is one of the three cases for which Sala was giving 30 years preventive detention, including one for extortion and another for being the head of an illicit organization. An invasion in Venezuela's embassy in Brazil by supporters of the Venezuelan opposition has come to an end. Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza confirmed that a group of people had forced their way into the building in the early hours of Tuesday. Arreaza tweeted that the government of Jair Bolsonaro is responsible for protecting the embassy and its workers. The Venezuelan Charge d'Affaires condemned the occupation while it was still underway.
We are here at the Venezuelan embassy in Brazil. We want to strongly condemn what has happened at this embassy. It was brought under siege by groups who forcibly entered into the territory and are now inside our premises. I'm here with lawmaker General Barroso, Paulo Pimenta from the PT, and Glover Braga from PSOL. And we want to reaffirm that we are standing strongly in support of the legitimate and constitutional government of President Nicolás Maduro.
Moving on, Brazil's Congress has officially ratified the government's Social Security reform bill into law. President Jair Bolsonaro proposed the reform back in February, alleging it would save the Brazilian state over $190 billion in the next 10 years. The main change is the increase of the retirement age for men and women. Other changes include an increase to workers' pension contributions and the mechanism to calculate benefits. Citizens had been protesting against the bill since it was introduced, saying they would likely die before being able to take advantage of their benefits. Trade union leaders in Chile say the general strike on Tuesday was a resounding success. The central demand for a constituent assembly appears to be gaining strength.
Work stoppages and marches throughout the country marked Tuesday's general strike in Chile. It was called by students, miners, shop workers, transport workers and public sector unions, and it all ended with a huge demonstration in Santiago.
This country cannot go on like this. It has to change. We have a golden opportunity to change the course of history. This is a rich country. We don't need to be like this. Those on top take the money and leave us without nothing.
We saw real unity among very different unions and a huge number of workers working off the job. That is the message to this decadent political class.
It was an uprising against the constitution which entrenches inequality and injustice. The demand was clear: a constituent assembly. That is why they reject the government's proposals which aim to quell the protests, but without success.
All the struggles of the Chilean people for health, education, workers' rights have been blocked by a constitution drawn up in the 80s by an elite, along with a military dictatorship, and which remained in place with the return of democracy under governments that just served neoliberal interests.
This government seems deaf to all our cries. The president tries to belittle the marches on TV, and that just makes the demonstrations and the indignation of the people grow much bigger.
After 26 days of protests, there are some victories. All the opposition parties have finally agreed to demand a new constitution through a constituent assembly. Piñera is being pushed into a corner.
As the slogan says, Chile has woken up, and this is an awakening in the political awareness of Chilean workers, because we no longer want to give others the power to decide how we live, and certainly not to this elite, which has made a small minority richer and the majority of the population poorer.
A constituent assembly means the Chilean people can decide their constitution, with a group of people elected by the people specifically for that. We want that assembly to reflect our plurinational diversity, with gender parity, with all our diversities represented, with social movements, with real social roots.
Defying expectations, there is no sign of the movement flagging, in spite of the repression which continues to leave many injured, and mounting reports of human rights violations.
Farmers in Ambo, Hitrimanjaca, Madagascar say they are boiling with anger over government's plans to relocate the capital to the green farmland. Hundreds of farmers are facing off with authorities over a presidential plan that threatens to engulf 1,000 hectares of rice fields. The farmers have since vowed to file a lawsuit against the plan as they fear losing their ancestral land. According to the government, the relocation will cost more than $600 million and create 200,000 jobs. Overcrowding, traffic jams, garbage pileups, and rapidly growing slums have prompted the government to move the capital from Antananarivo.
We will not exchange our land for money, nor will we agree to move, because the rice fields have supported us and our ancestors. The sales help finance our daily needs and pay for our children's schooling. And when the rice harvest is over and I don't earn enough, I just can sell my crop.
South African opposition leader Julius Malema has charged that economic sanctions on Zimbabwe by the United States and the European Union are a retaliation by imperialist forces against the country's land reform program.
The British government and its British settler community in Zimbabwe were never interested in justice. They were only interested in maintaining the privileges colonialism bestowed upon them. They were never saw African people as equal human beings who can govern their own affairs. This is still the case in Zimbabwe, as it is the case in South Africa. If you dare touch the privilege of colonialism, which bestowed upon settler minority the right to dominate a native majority, you better be prepared for the full might of racist global institutions. All the trouble of Zimbabwe therefore started when Zimbabweans began taking back their land, and the white world stood up and vowed to punish President Mugabe and all Zimbabweans for daring to take back what rightfully belongs to them.
South African Airways workers are set to go on strike on Friday, the 15th of November, following a breakdown of talks between the workers' union and airline management. President of the Cabin Crew Workers Association, Asasi Sibanyoni, told journalists that management's unwillingness to address the workers' concerns has left the union with no option but to call for a strike. The workers are demanding for an 8% pay rise and a halt to planned retrenchments. More than 3,000 workers are expected to take part in the strike. Zimbabwe's national parks continue to suffer due to an ongoing drought as more wild animals have died because of a lack of water. In fact, more than 100 elephants have perished in the last 3 months. There are also reports of wild animals causing chaos as they enter human settlements in search of water. The National Parks Authority said it has tried drilling boreholes, but that the water has not been sufficient to save the animals.
These deaths are attributed to the effects of climate change as a result of shortage of water and food. Right now, where we are standing, there are about 8 carcasses. But as management, we've managed to do our own intervention to try and augment water to the natural water ponds which are around the park. But you'd find that even though we have put some boreholes to try and supply water, still they are insufficient. Looking at the number of animals, especially the elephants, which are flocking from Botswana, because we share the same population.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The first day of public impeachment hearing for United States President Donald Trump has ended with more evidence pointing to his constitutional violation. Testifying before the House Intelligence Committee, top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, linked President Trump to a pressure campaign on Ukraine to conduct investigations that would benefit him politically. Citizens who watched the proceedings also expressed their concerns over President Trump's conduct.
The ambassadors that have already testified this morning have pretty much provided damning evidence that Trump has put his private interests over the interests of the nation, and that's as high a crime as you can get. He can yell no quid pro quo all he wants, but the fact is he's already admitted it, as has Mulvaney, and the proof is just piling up. These are high crimes.
For a while I wasn't, because I said he'll never get out of office, and now there's hope. And we need to clean this up, whether we're Democrat or Republicans. We need to think about America and think about what America stands for, and he doesn't stand for America.
Anti-government protesters in Pakistan have decided to expand the road blockade to the entire country and not just the main highway leading to the capital. Anti-government protesters have called off a 2-week sit-in on the capital's main highway and embarked on what they called a Plan B protest aimed at crippling the country's roads and ousting Prime Minister Imran Khan. The protesting opposition accused Prime Minister Khan's government of illegitimacy and being propped up by the military. However, the military did not denies meddling in politics, and Khan has also insisted he will not step down.
The basic aim of this protest is to rid the country of the present rulers, and we are not willing to move an inch from this motive. This movement will continue. You will have to increase pressure on the government and compel them to resign and to hold general elections in the country. We will accept nothing less than this.
Egypt is defending itself from strong criticisms received from diplomats at the United Nations review of its human rights record in Geneva. The country has faced allegations of torture, extrajudicial killings, forced disappearances, as well as concerns over mass trials. However, the Egyptian Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, Omar Marwan, argued that Egypt has made great efforts to improve its respect for human rights. He added that the nation was not granted enough time to state its case.
The authority at the Council for Human Rights committed a violation because she asked Egypt to provide her with information on this case, and she gave Egyptian authorities 60 days to respond. We are stunned. Only a few days after she sent us this letter, she issued her statement.
The death toll from Israeli strikes on the occupied Gaza Strip has risen to 24. Palestine's Ministry of Health confirmed that at least 24 people have been killed since Tuesday morning. The strikes have also left dozens of people with serious injuries. Gaza's residents have accused Israel of targeting residential buildings, contrary to its claim that it is only targeting Hamas installations. Meanwhile, the Arab League has said attacks are an attempt by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to revive his political strength after failing to form a coalition government since the September elections. Palestinians across the occupied Gaza Strip have held funerals for the 24 people killed in Israeli airstrikes. Many of the mourners have waved Palestinian flags and called on the international community to hold Israel accountable for the killing of civilians. The victims of the airstrike include a child who was killed when her home was hit by an Israeli missile.
A rocket was fired. I turned around and I found the men lying on the ground. So I ran to them and I found them stained with blood, and a young child was seriously injured.
Despite police intervention, Catalan pro-independence protesters have once again blocked a major highway at the border point with France. Protests erupted mere hours after law enforcement had attempted to clear a blockade by Catalan activists along the thoroughfare, which had restricted access over the past 2 days. But by Wednesday morning, protesters had once again blocked the road with debris. When a line of police in riot gear advanced, demonstrators retreated, but not before setting fire the makeshift barricades. Protests have been triggered by the recent imprisonment of 9 pro-independence politicians and activists. It also follows Sunday's national election. Leaders from the Sahel region in Africa have appealed for international support to ensure peace prevails. Speaking during a peace summit in France, regional leaders blamed the lack of solidarity from the international community for the existence of the G5 Sahel forces, who are currently maintaining security in Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, and Niger. The G5 Sahel forces were formed in 2014 to strengthen security between the 5 countries, but have been struggling due to lack of funding.
The question that we ask, why are the joint forces of G5 of the Sahel not yet operational? But with what can we take these G5 forces operational? With our means? All the more so, when other forces are better equipped than our armies. There you see the difference.
The mayor of Venice in Italy has declared a state of emergency after the second highest tide recorded in the city flooded its historic basilica and left many squares and alleyways submerged in water. A food alarm was also sounded across the city as high waters peaked at nearly 2 meters. Much of Italy has been hit with torrential rains in recent days, causing widespread flooding. Millions in India are celebrating the 550th anniversary of the birth of Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism. A sea of devotees took part in a religious procession while also visiting temples, volunteering at community kitchens. This year, The celebrations hold a special significance. It marks the historic opening of a religious corridor between India and Pakistan to allow Indian Sikhs visa-free access to the place where the Guru breathed his last in 1539, now one of the religious holiest sites. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, you can find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.